Welcome back to the Mental Performance Masterclass. I'm Nick Kleitch, and with me, my co-host Scott Litter, also the owner of Litt Leadership and Performance. Scott, how are we doing?
Doing great, doing great. Got the new shirt on today, so excited to be here. Excited to be with you. Love our topic tonight. It's going to be a great one.
No doubt, yeah. And real quick, is there a way people can find that to order that, or is this your special edition shirt this time around?
I'm not selling them right now. Nope, these are mine. These are mine. So you have to come into
Well,
my house and steal it if you want it. So
I love it. Well, it looks great, and we were talking a little bit about that off air. But yeah, a wonderful intro. As you were just sharing into what we're going to be talking today. Real quick, though, just for folks hearing us for the first time, this mini series podcast is really about us discussing and detailing mental performance. And kind of all things that fall under that umbrella. And we're still in season 1, which is self-talk. Episode 1, we covered a little bit on responding to negative events. And number 2 was just good old-fashioned performance, kind of tools and tactics around that. So tonight's topic is such a good one, such a fun one. We're going to be talking about essentially the victimhood mentality and also being able to find your way into a winning mentality as well, too. And you had a wonderful story that we had wanted to work in here just to kick things off, Scott. So I'll go ahead and give it over to you.
yeah, I want to tell you about James. So James was one of the top soccer coaches in the U.S. and he called up a guy named Bill Beswick. Bill Beswick is one of the top sports psychologists in England. He called up Bill and he said, "Bill, I've got a problem. In 2 days, we have to face the number one ranked team in America. And it's a problem because I have 5 players who are injured or not going to be able to play. I've got another 4 that just today were declared ineligible because of drug issues. Not only that, but the stadium is sold out. It's on national television, and I'm going to have to start 5 18-year-old kids." Bill thought for a minute and said, "James, I don't like the story you're telling me. Call me back in an hour with a better story." Click. Hangs up on it. Hangs up on him. An hour later, the phone rings. Bill Beswick picks it up. James says, "Bill, I've got to tell you about an exciting opportunity we have in 2 days. We get the challenge, the opportunity to play the number one ranked team in America. Our stadium is sold out. It's going to be, the energy is going to be, it's going to be insane, right? And it's on national TV. And I'm going to get to show my coaching by playing 5 18-year-olds who are excited to be on that field. And I can't wait to do it." So Bill, of course, congratulated him on changing the story. It took an hour, but he changed the story. And late that night, Bill got a text from James that said 1-2-0, thank you. And so it really is, the difference between being a victim and a fighter is really about the story we tell ourselves. And so I think that's a great story that really demonstrates how that can make such a big difference in our lives.
And I think the wonderful sentiment there's so many in that story, but just the difference in your energy, the difference in your mentality and your confidence is all in the language. And this is why we put this particular topic under self-talk, because victim language, victim behavior, that really can affect all of us, right? And so sometimes I wonder myself, like, what even is this, right? Like, what is victim mentality? And I'll share this definition. I don't want to, read to the prompt, so to speak, but I think this sums it up pretty good. So victimhood mentality refers to a mindset where someone consistently sees themselves as a victim of either circumstances, other people, or life itself, even when they have the power to change or influence things. Oftentimes, this can involve blaming other people instead of taking responsibility, feeling powerless or stuck, constantly focusing on what's unfair or wrong, and then lastly, resisting growth because it's just simply not my fault. So as a listener, maybe just consume that a little bit and think, gosh, where maybe in my life am I using this type of language, or am I using this type of language? Because I think a lot more people would have to kind of admit to themselves subconsciously that this is kind of the way that they speak, maybe about themselves, about the circumstances, or about the world. But using this as a nice kind of bridge for us, Scott, I know one thing that was important was awareness, having the awareness of knowing what this language look like and why we do it maybe and how it kind of comes to be. And I know you had another kind of prime example of this. So if you want to go ahead and run with it from here, now that we have the stage set in terms of the definition of victimhood mentality and how it kind of shows up and finding awareness around that.
Yeah, 100% awareness is key, right? Solving any problem starts with awareness and your words. Do you have to do something or do you get to do something? A simple idea. And I was actually working with a cross country team in Iowa, a small school cross country team this last fall. And I went to speak in the gym to the team. And I got there, and the first thing the coach started telling me about was all the injuries they had and all the sickness they had, and how they had a chance to be ranked in the top 10. And now with all the sickness and injury, that probably wasn't going to happen. And so the first thing I talked to that team about, and I knew the coach was listening, was, hey, you've got an opportunity to perform at your best. Doesn't matter who's on the course. Everybody that steps on the course has an opportunity to perform at your very best, give your best effort, have a great attitude, and just try to help them reframe this situation. And everybody at that time of the season, it doesn't even matter what sport it is. It doesn't matter if it's football, volleyball, cross country. Injuries are going to happen. Sickness is going to happen, right? People are going to the season gets long. And so it's not what happens to you, how you respond to it, and being able to not say, why me, not focus on the injuries, not focus on the sickness, but to focus on the opportunities in front of you and be a fighter, not a victim. And I got done talking to him, and the coach came down. He said, "Oh, I feel so much better. I feel so much better." And I was there to talk to the kids, but I knew he was listening. And sometimes we can reframe our own story, but sometimes we need somebody else to come in and reframe the story for us, and it makes all the difference. And he walked out of that gym excited about the opportunities in front of him, even though he had some injuries and sickness on the team at that time. And they went on to qualify for the state tournament for the first time in school history. And so I really believe him reframing that, even with a little help from me, was key to their end of season success.
No doubt. And in prior episodes, we've kind of littered this in a little bit in terms of why we put this under self-talk, right? Because it is a form of language that we're carrying to our team, if we're a coach or a leader, or even ourselves as we show up in everyday life. And one thing I just kind of want to go back here to the notes on as you've shared this is the back half of that definition stated, even when we have the power to change or influence things. And I think that's incredibly important to consider because you helped him reframe that he is in fact in control and he has the ability to change the mentality coming in. And unfortunately, victimhood, it really can sound nice. And it's almost comforting, unfortunately, to hear some of those things because it gives that power away. And you almost have the capacity to be like, okay, it's somebody else's problem, right? It's somebody else will come in and swoop in and save the day. Or, the classic, it just is what it is. So I don't know if you have any other comments on that, but I think that story really encapsulates obviously the awareness around it, but why it's so important to remember we're in control of the language that we're sharing to ourselves and to our team.
Well, I think another thing to be aware of is what we are focusing on and whether we're focusing on things that we can control or can't control, because he was focusing on the injuries and sickness on his team, which he had absolutely no control over. And when he realized that he could focus on the effort that he and his team were going to give, the attitude they came to practice with, and the amount of energy that they came to practice and every competition with, when he started focusing on effort, attitude, energy, which are things he can control, it changed him from that victim mentality and put him into fighter mentality where him and his team needed to be.
Yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful. And I do encourage, or I guess let me rephrase that. I have encouraged you as you've brought some more real life examples to the podcast mini series here, because I think that it's a direct correlation to what we're talking about, right? Like, yes, we are speaking on this topic and wanting to hope that it can provide value to everyday people or athletes or coaches. But when it's used in real time, that's kind of the credibility that we're, reiterating to those listening. So yeah, all good stuff. Now let's take that kind of athletics, and coaching into more maybe real life struggles. And you had another very well prepared piece here, so I'm not going to talk too long on this, but we're going to just kind of transition a little bit into how this relates to just kind of everyday people and everyday struggles.
Yeah, we all have struggles, right? We either just gone through a struggle, we're struggling with something now, or there's one coming up in our lives. That's the way life works. And it's all about how we respond to those struggles. And a great example would be Bill Beswick's actually, the psychologist I talk about, is actually struggling with Parkinson's disease. And I don't really know at this point in time where he's at, but he actually talked about when he was diagnosed with Parkinson's, he let his kids know. His son called him and said, Dad, we're going to be there in 2 days. They lived quite a ways away. We're coming with the family. We're going to have a family meeting and we're going to figure out how we can best fight this Parkinson's. He didn't go into that victim mentality. He went right away into, we're going to fight this. And I think about all the people that face diagnosis of cancer, Parkinson's, heart disease. Maybe it's loss of a job. Maybe it's a divorce. Maybe it's problems with children or parents, right? We all struggle with things. Maybe it's just a coworker you're struggling to get along with at work. Whatever it is, we tend to feel sorry for ourselves. Why do I have to go through this? Why do I have to work with that person? Why did my mom or my dad or my son or me, why did I get that disease? And that really doesn't serve us. The why me, we can't change that situation, but we can change whether we say why me or we say I'm fighting. I'm going to be a fighter today. Not only grateful for the things I do have, but I'm going to fight and I'm going to respond the very best I can to whatever struggle I'm going through at the time.
And I think that builds an incredible grit and really helps sharpen your mentality and your mindset towards everything in life. And we need that because you had also shared before we hopped on here something from John Maxwell, simply to the effect of, good things in life happen, bad things in life happen, and we're just going to get a dose of both of those throughout the course of our life. And we're sharing all of this. If you're, again, listening or watching, this is why we're wanting to have this podcast, is to share some of these tools and tactics and encourage you to embrace these things to be able to shift from that victim mentality to a winning mentality. And we'll get a little bit to that winning mentality here towards the end. But one thing I do want to really hammer down here is, if you're someone who feels like maybe life is just constantly coming at you and you're not winning, and it's just like, gosh, why do all these bad things happen to me? That might be a language piece that you understand. Hey, maybe it's the attitude that I'm bringing forth to life that's attracting all of these bad things, right? Again, you're going to get a dose here of good, you're going to get a dose of bad, but the more we're intoxicated by that victimhood mentality and the more we kind of pull it together, and maybe we have friends that are feeding it as well, that is just simply not going to help in any way, shape, or form with where we're ultimately trying to get in life. So if that's you, don't feel too bad. It happens to everyone, but maybe this is the podcast you need to kind of reframe your mentality and maybe get a little bit more to the warrior or the fighter's mentality. Any other thing before we move forward here, Scott?
Well, I just wanted to point out, this is not something, I learned how to be a fighter instead of a victim. Now I'm good. It doesn't work that way. Every day you have to wake up and make a decision to not be a victim and to be a fighter, to take responsibility and not blame others. And just to show you this, I mean, I talk to athletes and people as I do my individual coaching, my group trainings. I talk about this all the time, but yet I still struggle with it at times. Just a few weeks ago, I'm mowing my lawn, which is a very steep hill in my backyard in a house that I bought about a year ago. And I'm sweating, right? It's just dripping off my face. I've been mowing for over an hour with my push mower. Don't have a riding mower down here yet. And I start to feel sorry for myself, right? The negative self-talk starts. Why did I buy a house with a hill? Why is it so hot out? Why do I have to push this? It was why me? And had a bad case of victim mentality. And then all of a sudden, an image of my dad popped into my head. And my dad had Parkinson's, just like Bill Beswick. In the last few years of my dad's life, he could not walk. And he had farmed and worked hard his whole life, loved being outside, loved to hunt, loved to do all kinds of active stuff. And he was robbed of that ability the last 3 years. Not only did he have Parkinson's, but he was stuck during COVID in a nursing home where he couldn't even get outside. And so I thought, wow, what would my dad, I call this changing perspective. What if I thought about this from my dad's perspective? What would if he was here right now, if he was back alive again, and he had the opportunity to walk up this hill and mow this lawn, he would give anything to be able to do that. And here I am feeling sorry for myself. What's wrong with me, right? So I think sometimes when you can change your perspective, like I did, and think, this is an opportunity. This is a beautiful day outside. I'm getting exercise. I'm getting my yard mowed. Why was I feeling sorry for myself? Because I was a victim. I was thinking like a victim. And when I changed it and decided it is a decision to be a fighter instead of a victim, it changed my whole attitude and made my day much better that day.
Wow. I'm not going to add anything on that because that is just a rock solid example of a real life situation where we had to catch ourselves. And I think that also kind of summarizes and pulls together the little pieces of the podcast we've already shared, right? You had the awareness, you were getting kind of sucked into victimhood mentality, and yet you use the tool of a change of perspective, to work out of that. So very, very well done. Another thing we're going to talk about here, and gosh, we wish we could hammer out, 15 to 20 things, but we're trying to be mindful of time, is the power of your circle. And we were jotting this down beforehand, and it really kind of occurred to us that whether we like it or not, the people we surround ourselves with could be the ones that are actually reiterating or feeding into the victim mentality. Now, there are those on the other end of the spectrum, so I'll go ahead and introduce, the warrior's mentality here. But before I kind of go into my full, description, I'd like to turn it back over to you just to talk a little bit about the power of your circle and, how people can either feed victimhood or potentially be a truth teller.
Well, I think we all like to vent, right? We all like to, when we're struggling with something, we like to go to somebody that maybe can empathize with us and say, oh yeah, you've got it so bad. I feel so bad for you, right? We like that. We like to have somebody be able to kind of feel our pain. And I think that's okay for a while. I think empathy is a great thing. But, and this comes from some research by Ethan Kross, who's written a couple of books, researcher out of Michigan. And he talks a lot about how when you go to find somebody and they kind of buy into your feelings, they buy into your victimhood, and they say, oh yeah, you have it so bad. I feel so bad for you. That's only good to a certain point. Right. It might help you build that relationship with them, but it doesn't really help you get out of that negative space in your head that you're in. At some point, you need that person to be a truth teller. You need that person to say, I understand you're going through some bad things, but now what are you going to do about it? What are your actions? How are you going to change your thinking? How are you going to change your actions to become a fighter in this situation? How are you going to make your life better because of this? Because we do grow through our struggles. We do improve because of the tough things we go through. And so having somebody that can be a truth teller and that can encourage us to fight and be grateful for what we have is super important. So I would encourage you to surround yourself with those people. It's great if they're also empathetic, but have truth tellers in your life.
Yeah, so important, because as we were talking about being subdued into victimhood, think about this for a second. Let's say you're going through a tough week at work, or you're having marital issues or what have you, and then you consistently are hanging out with this group of people. And let's say this short-term negative event, instead of it being something that only affects you for, let's say, a couple weeks, this group continues to feed you and feed you and feed you. And now we haven't gained any progress for, let's say, 90 days, maybe even 6 months or your whole lifetime. And it's not that they're bad people, right? But we have to have a couple of folks at a minimum, which is obviously why people love, sports teams and getting coached, is that a group that can just shift the energy a little bit. It's equally as contagious. If you're with 4 or 5 others that have this mentality, you're going to be the sixth. It's just the kind of nature's law there. So again, do a little bit of self-analysis to, okay, maybe on Tuesday nights I hang out with this group, and maybe Thursday nights I hang out with this group, or kind of identifying that person in your life that's, why are they always they're driven, they're on, their mentality is great. And if you don't have that person, try to seek out mentorship any way you can to get someone in your corner to give you more of this kind of warrior's mentality and to feed into that, so you can kind of slowly work on yourself. And honestly, I'll be a little vulnerable here. Sometimes you just got to be that person for yourself, right? One of the lessons I learned as a young man was, no one's coming to save you sometimes. You have to be able to pick yourself up and use that energy and use these tools and tactics to kind of get to where you want to go. So any other things you would like to add to that before we get to our concluding point?
I just really liked what you just said. Your self-talk. Self-talk is talking to yourself. And sometimes it's not self-talk. Somebody else helps you. But most of the time, it really is what you're saying to yourself. That really makes the difference. And you're exactly right. We can't wait around for coming to save us. We have to just make the decision to say the things in our head that lead to the actions that lead to a new opportunity instead of a problem.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. And you'll also find too, that if you're that person that can build that in yourself, you will attract people. You'll certainly reject some people, but you will also attract some people that when they hear you, they'll be like, okay, I need more of that. We as adults know the truth of a lot of situations, right? We just need to be pleasantly reminded sometimes, and the truth hurts sometimes. But anyway, not to allow that to kind of trickle on. The last point we have here, I think, is a great one to conclude. So again, season 1 was self-talk. And one thing that we're going to wrap everything into is really the story that we're telling ourselves. And we alluded to it a little bit in the initial awareness phase, but I'd like you to hammer home here, Scott, the power of the story that we're telling ourselves as it relates to victimhood versus warriors mentality.
Well, just back to some things we said on an earlier podcast that we have up to 60,000 thoughts a day, and 45,000 of them are generally negative, and a lot of these are subconscious thoughts. But these thoughts are telling a story. We're telling ourselves our story. And just like James did as the soccer coach when Bill made him wait an hour and call back to change his story, we have the power to change our story every single day. And it's a matter of deciding to do it, being aware of when we're telling the wrong story, and then be able to switch over and say, nope, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be a victim today. I'm going to be a fighter. And so it's really a decision that you make. And as we've talked about, sometimes somebody can help you, but in the end, it's your responsibility to change your story.
Beautifully said. The only other kind of nail in the coffin that I will add in there is really taking ownership of the knowledge that you can change your story. If it's something at first that feels a little taboo, that's okay. It's supposed to. Change feels a little uncomfortable, but the more you can reiterate and implement this kind of winning mentality, championship mentality, warriors mentality, whatever you want to coin it, I can almost guarantee that the path of your life will begin to improve and you'll start attracting the right people in your life. So any other kind of final thoughts here as we wrap up our third episode?
I will just say that if you do feel like you need help from somebody else, whether it's professional counseling, whether it's a coach, that don't be afraid to reach out to others. I mean, we're encouraging you to change your own story, but some people that it might be something where you really need to reach out for help. And so I would encourage you, if you're in that spot, to not be afraid to do that. Yeah,
absolutely. And to look you up, Scott, too, because I know that there's a lot of principles that you've learned in your coaching practice that may be of benefit too. So if there's any interest to obviously reach out your way. Very good. Well, this was a really action-packed episode. We appreciate everyone that is tuning in and listening to the Mental Performance Masterclass. And until next time.